Traoré of Burkina Faso, Goïta of Mali, and Tiani of Niger, these three presidents from the Sahel have announced their collective withdrawal from the International Criminal Court. I promise you guys, this has to be the best news I received last week. Now, to some people, this is history in motion. Africa finally rejecting what many have long called a biased institution, one that fills its dock with Africans only while leaving the powerful untouched. You know who I'm talking about. But these three presidents have gone further. They have also accused the ICC of being an instrument of new colonial repression. Isn't that true though? A court that targets less privileged countries while sparing the world's strongest. But to other people, some people are saying this is reckless. This is actually abandoning the only global court where victims of war can turn when their own government fails them. And it's here that the criticism begins.
The new junta governments have clearly positioned themselves as being in alliance with Russia. So I suspect that there would probably be political pressure for them to make a stand against the International Criminal Court.
Honestly, I was not expecting people to be quiet about this because there's an obsession with people criticizing African leaders. Every other time they decide they want to leave these colonial institutions. I mean, take a look at Al Jazeera. The moment this story broke, they brought in Maxine Rubin. They call her a postdoctoral researcher at the German Institute of Global and Area Studies. And she suggested that the Sahel's withdrawal might be the result of Russian pressure. But you see, I don't know, because her words actually reveal more about Western assumptions than about the Sahel itself. I don't know if Al Jazeera could not find someone who is actually not going to be biased and give their opinion in an unbiased manner. Because this is actually great news to majority of African people, that we have presidents who are daring to exit the ICC. So bringing her in such an important conversation to our continent speaks a couple of things. First, this framing by her denies African agency.
And the International Criminal Court currently has a warrant of arrest for Putin for war crimes and crimes against humanity in the Ukraine crisis.
You know, to reduce Traoré, Goïta, and Tiani to Kremlin or Russia pawns is to strip their nations of independent thought. It is actually to say Africans cannot make choices unless someone else whispers in their ears. And this is the same colonial lens these leaders claim they are fighting. The idea that African action is never truly African, but always a reflection of someone else's power. Because this is what people like Traoré are fighting. We can make our own independent decisions. Someone like Putin doesn't have to have a gun on us to make us realize that it's about time African countries exit the ICC. Secondly, this claim by this woman is historically shallow. African leaders, even before Akina Traoré, we have had African presidents who have challenged the ICC for almost 20 years, long before Russia's presence in the Sahel. I mean, Museveni in Uganda said something about the ICC, Kagame in Rwanda, Kenyatta here in Kenya, Zuma in South Africa. So why did you not say that the way they reason is because Russia is influencing their thoughts? All these presidents have publicly denounced this court as biased. The African Union itself debated a mass withdrawal over a decade ago. To erase this history and blame today's decision on Russia is to act as though Africa has no memory. Actually, we have no voice of our own. And thirdly, the Russia angle ignores what has been burning locally for years. France soldiers were expelled not because Russia demanded it, but because their presence in Sahel region failed to deliver peace. These countries left ECOWAS not because of Russia, not actually because of Putin's influence, but because sanctions deepened hunger and isolation. Then you go deeper, the CFA franc is being questioned not as a favor to Kremlin, but because it ties African economies to Europe's shadow. Now, Russia may be a new partner here, and we spoke about the dangers of Russia in the Sahel region, but we cannot say Russia is now calling the shots. The roots of this rebellion towards the ICC runs deep, and it is actually grounded in Africa realities. No, the ICC also is a very useless arm when it comes to Africans, just like the United Nations. Guys, we need to leave these places. And finally, this woman's framing exposes a double standard. When Europe builds their own court, they will say that is sovereignty. When Americans are out here creating their own courts as well, people will say this is regional strength. But when when African presidents come together and say, we are going to design a Sahelian court, then you guys, you start suspecting these decisions. As if justice on African soil must always be explained through someone else's power. And this is why the withdrawal cannot simply be explained away as a Russian pressure. The truth is very simple and very hard to ignore. Africa is making a choice shaped by years of grievance, disappointment, and frustration. A choice to step outside institutions that many people here believe were never meant to serve them. Anyway, we have to take a deep breath and grasp the weight of this decision, because I don't think these three presidents woke up and decided, you know what, we are going to leave the ICC. We really need to step back, because this choice did not just appear overnight. It is rooted in a long and bitter history with the ICC.
The court has transformed itself into a political instrument targeting Africa and Africans.
For years, African leaders have accused the court of being unfair since its creation in 2002. Its work has focused mainly on Africa. Uganda's Museveni called it what? A tool to target African leaders. Kagame described it as selective justice. Uhuru once said the ICC was a toy of declining imperial powers, and South Africa's Zuma dismissed it as not impartial. Now, one may wonder, so if all these presidents have seen the ICC as it is, what are their countries still doing there? And this is why you have to applaud the Sahel countries. They don't just speak big, they are not there calling the ICC all sorts of names. They're actually sitting together and they are going through this and they are realizing this is not working for our people. So we actually need to exit. The Sahel leaders are making clear that their withdrawal is not an isolated act. Other people have spoken about it. But what they are doing, they are acting on it. They are not there like Akina Uhuru or Akina Kagame just speaking. They've decided, no, action speaks louder. So we are going to withdraw our membership from the ICC. And their action is part of a wider African frustration with how the ICC has operated over the years. And the decision by these Sahel leaders carry two messages. Legally, it is a formal withdrawal, but politically, it is a declaration that Africa should not always be judged in foreign courts, far away from its own soil. How did we get here, guys? How did we get here where people are even divided? Their opinion on ICC is divided. And to answer that, we must look back at how the ICC was born. And this is why every time I sit here, I keep telling you guys, don't just look at these things from a surface level perspective. Always ask, how was this institution born? What did it promise? And also, why the relationship with Africa has remained so fraught. I'm going to give you a bit of history because I know sometimes these are the details we miss. The ICC came into existence in 2002 under the Rome Statute with a simple mission: prosecute individuals responsible for genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and also later, crimes of aggression. They said, if your national courts cannot act on this, we will. And they said, the ICC will definitely serve you guys as a last resort. Come to us, we got you. And from the very beginning, Africa became its main stage. Uganda, from the very beginning, referred the Lord's Resistance Army in 2003. Then soon after, DRC, Central African Republic, and Mali followed. And in its first 2 decades, during the ICC, nearly every major case has centered on Africa. You had Sudan's Omar al-Bashir charged with genocide in Darfur. Kenya's Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto, they were accused of post-election violence. Ivory Coast's Gambo, he was tried for crimes against humanity, and also rebel leaders from Uganda, Congo, and the Central African Republic. But we are not saying these people should not have been prosecuted. But meanwhile, outside Africa, the court continues to stumble. You have wars in Iraq, Afghanistan, Palestine, even right now. A lot of injustice happening. But you see, these people, the perpetrators, continue facing years of delay. No justice at all, no prosecution actually. And the result is an image of imbalance. Africa under the spotlight, let's make an example using Africa as a continent, but then you leave the powerful ones. They will be left untouched. And this imbalance cuts both ways. Africa is the ICC's biggest block of members. How many members are we talking about? 34 states. Yet the court's budget is largely bankrolled by wealthy non-African states like Japan, Germany, France, and the UK. But then at the same time, US, Russia, China, and India will never join, but they keep shielding their own leaders from any accountability. I mean, African countries are the majority in the ICC, but look at who is funding it. So please tell me, if today one of these funders decide we have a problem with a certain leader from, say, South Africa, I mean, don't you see that might actually influence some things here and there? Because the equation looks like this. Africa will supply the numbers, then the global north will supply the money, then the world's most powerful will keep themselves outside the court's reach. So now, when you go to Traoré and other people, they might look at this and say, you know what, this is selective justice in plain sight. And no wonder reactions across the continent have always been divided when it comes to the ICC. On one side, governments often push back, insisting the ICC undermines sovereignty and serves foreign powers, but they are still there. They are still in this particular institution. The same way as we talked, they will go and give long speeches at UNGA, stand there and make long speeches, but they are still there. They are still members of the UN. And then you have the African Union always debating mass withdrawal, but doing nothing about it. I actually think we need a whole conversation on the African Union, because I also don't think we need the African Union. Because this whole division leaves a lot of people not knowing where to go. And I really feel for a lot of African citizens, especially survivors of war and violence, to welcome the ICC to them was a good thing. Because in countries where justice systems are weak or compromised, the ICC has been, the only real chance to hold warlords or even presidents accountable. But can you imagine presenting them with courts that understand them, courts that will not even side with the presidents, but also side with justice and say, yes, this has happened to you, but because you are a citizen of this country, let us also show you that justice can work even here. Because even though the leaders will cry that, oh, the ICC is foreign control, these people find hope here. They find hope in these institutions because this is their only hope. So when there's a bit of division and talk on should we leave, should we not leave, I get where the victims are coming from. But now, maybe this is where the Sahel rulers have stepped and they are like, we might have a solution here. Let us pull out of the ICC together and replace it with a Sahelian court to handle crimes committed within their regions. Maybe that is what they had in mind. Because if the Sahel court takes root, it could become Africa's prototype. A framework that one day expands beyond these three countries into a continental court of international crimes. A court that operates in African languages, interprets African realities, and also draws on African traditions of justice. A court that will understand, the weight of war in Timbuktu or any other place far better than judges who are sitting thousands of miles away. And I don't want us to downplay this idea because the potential is very enormous. Such a court can do a couple of things. It can restore faith by showing Africans that justice can be served on African soil. It can also inspire other regions of the continent to strengthen their own judicial bodies. They can actually do that. And also, they can bring justice physically closer to victims. They can do that. And finally, they can show the world that Africa can design, fund, and run a credible system that stands shoulder to shoulder with global courts. So, we have to cheer for them as they try to flip this narrative of us and our cases being solved by the international court. This court can mark the moment Africa stops being judged only from outside and begins to judge from within. And that's a beautiful thing. We are not going to achieve sovereignty if these things don't happen. And I'm one of those people who are cheering on because this is not just about law, it's about ownership. It's about dignity and the possibility of building an African path to justice. One that does not wait for permission, but sets its own precedent for the world to follow. And that is a beautiful thing. I know a lot of criticism will come. I know definitely it's not in some foreign nation's interest to see the Sahel countries withdraw from the ICC. But I love that this conversation has happened. I mean, how hard is it for us to be able to solve our own cases? We need presidents who believe in their own justice system. And I love that these three presidents are walking the talk because I know the fear. I get the fear that, we might not actually get justice in some of these African countries because the presidents will always have influence. But then I hope other African presidents can see through the intentions of these three Sahel leaders and see they really want the best for their people. It's such a shame that we continue waiting for an international court to come and solve our issues. And that is why I say no one takes African presidents seriously. Even in those UN speeches, you guys, you go there and you stand there and you give a whole lecture, 1 hour. No one will take you seriously if your own judicial system is poor. But me, I choose to be hopeful. I really want a lot of African countries to withdraw from the ICC so that they can face the challenge head on and give the best to their citizens. So let me know what your thoughts are on these three countries' withdrawal from the ICC, and who else would you love to see follow? Or is it a mistake? Me, I've always insisted I love having these conversations with you guys on the comment section because I love that we might not always agree, but we also disagree very respectfully. So share your thoughts with me, and thank you so much for tuning in, and hopefully I get to see you guys tomorrow. Not really sure about the time, but I'm sure we'll definitely have an episode for you tomorrow. Bye.